When I caught my wife sleeping with my brother, no one told her to leave. Instead, the family gathered around and lectured me about moving on with grace and protecting our image. So I packed my things, signed the papers, took my half of the assets, and walked away for good. No one looked back. Turns out starting over wasn't the curse they imagined. I found 3 kids, battered, cast out by the world, armed with nothing but grit and patience. I raised them, and under my roof, they became legends. One runs a business empire. One owns the spotlight. One rewrites the future in the country's top laboratories. Then, this winter, my biological daughter showed up in the middle of nowhere, where I had built myself a modest life. She found me in a faded patio chair, soaking up what little warmth the sun had left. If Grandma and Grandpa weren't so sentimental, I wouldn't be in this dump to drag you home for the holidays, she scoffed, boots crunching in the frost. She let her gaze sweep across my rundown yard. You walked out. And you know what? My sister Laura took over the company, my brother Isaac's a megastar online, and I got into Stanford. Our lives are better than ever. She looked at me, expecting regret. So, Dad, you abandoned us over some money. Do you regret it now? I met her stare, steady as ever. Serena still wore that smug, untouchable look, just like when she was a kid. If she was waiting for me to grovel, she'd be disappointed. Stanford's a fine school, I replied calmly. She sneered at my cool, emotionless answer. The new year's coming. It's Grandpa's 80th. Grandma's worried sick, so here I am. You could at least try to be a little more considerate, act like a grown-up. For once, I didn't argue. My parents were getting old. No matter how much betrayal you suffer, there are debts you still owe. Serena took my silence for defeat. Her glare swept over my unfinished house with open pity. Looks like this is what you got for turning your back on us. But hey, don't worry. Legally you're still our father. When you're old and useless, we'll send you a check. Just so you know, Grandma might welcome you, but in our family, to us, Uncle Hugo's always been Dad. I looked at her, and for a moment I saw the little girl at the top of the staircase, feverish, trembling with loyalty for a man who was never her father. I remembered the shove, my own daughter pushing me, the family believing every word Hugo fed them. You're not my daddy. Uncle Hugo is my daddy. She played the victim, and they swallowed it whole, my wife glaring, Hugo looking wounded. Even then, she was a weapon for them, not a child. All that's left for me now is weariness, but not regret. I managed a crooked grin. Don't worry. Your mother and I are long divorced. I'll be gone after the holidays. Before I left, I texted my real kids. New Year's at your grandmother's this year. All 3 replied instantly. Got it, Dad. With them, I've never been lonely. The next day, I packed a bag and rode with Serena back to my old family's home. Everything was exactly as I remembered. I was the one who had changed. Hugo was the first person I saw. Polished shoes, gold-rimmed glasses, that same smug confidence from all those years ago. When he spotted me, he put on a show, arms wide. Brother, we've missed you. It's Dad's 80th. Come inside, get warm, have some tea. Relatives watched from every corner, eyes full of questions and judgment, like I was a ghost come back to haunt the living. Serena breezed past me, made a show of hugging Hugo, and dropped an expensive watch into his hand. Dad, look what I brought you. Hugo beamed for the audience. Serena, you're a wonderful daughter. This is beautiful. He shot me a glance full of triumph. All I did was sip my tea and watch. She was a good kid, too bad she bet on the wrong father. Mother rushed to me, tears brimming. Victor, my son, you've grown so thin, suffered so much. It's good you're home. She held on to me, and for a moment, all the burden softened. They had always favored Hugo. He was polished, educated, the image of success I was never allowed to be. Bianca and the rest of the family came in. Past resentments hung in the air like smoke. I was the black sheep, the one who walked away. Dad, what are you doing here? Isaac sneered. Trying to ruin everything again? Don't make trouble, Laura hissed, stepping between me and Hugo like I might lash out. Mom silenced them with a glare, but the resentment simmered. My father's scowl returned. What did you come back for? We haven't heard from you in years. Life goes south and now you want company? I shrugged. I'm here for Mom. Hugo stepped up, all fake magnanimity. Don't be too hard on him. He's family, after all. Right? Then there was a commotion at the door. A sharply dressed courier arrived, pushing a cart stacked with velvet-wrapped boxes. The room fell silent as he announced, delivery for Mr. Victor Song. Please sign here. Hugo, quick as always, tried to take the clipboard. The courier stopped him. Sorry, sir. I can only give these to Mr. Victor Song himself. Serena frowned. That must be a mistake. Those are probably for my father. But she went pale when she saw the sender, Clarity Group, Lionheart Media, Stanford Research Division. I stepped forward, showed my ID, and signed. The courier bowed, relieved to be done with such important packages. Hugo elbowed me aside and opened the boxes for everyone to see, eager for any chance to steal the spotlight. But these gifts were way out of his league: heirloom jewelry, rare vintage wines, medical supplements, more expensive than cars. Laura and Isaac glanced at each other, confused. Nothing they had arranged could match this, but their pride kept them silent. The guests murmured, awkward admiration spreading through the room. Hugo forced a smile, still trying to assert control. "Brother, it's been hard for you out there, but family is family. Why don't you do the right thing? Get on your knees, wish Mom and Dad a happy new year. Lead by example for once." Everyone watched, faces hungry for drama. I didn't flinch. There was a time I might have. A time I'd have bowed my head just to keep the peace, smiled through the bile in my throat just to be civil. But that victor was gone, buried with the man who once believed loyalty could mend betrayal. I glanced at the boxes still resting on the velvet cart. One bore a note, delicate handwriting on thick cream paper. I picked it up and read aloud, slowly, clearly. "To the man who gave my life a second chance. You believed in me when I had nothing, not even myself. Because of you, I became someone the world listens to. Happy New Year, Dad. With all my love, your son, Ellis." A ripple moved through the crowd. My son. The one who had started with a part-time job repairing old laptops at age 15 and now headed a multi-million-dollar research lab that partnered with Stanford. Ellis had always been quiet, methodical, and fiercely loyal. Another note was tucked under the wine box. "To Dad, because you told me the stage wasn't too big, and I wasn't too small. Your belief became my spotlight. From your daughter, Melody." Gasps this time. Melody song. That Melody. The actress on every billboard in Times Square last month. The one winning awards I had stopped counting. The one they had all dismissed as a dreamer. And the last note was scrawled in fast, messy writing, more emotion than order. "To the man who taught me that you don't need blood to be family, that monsters can be beat with kindness and grit. I'm alive because you chose me. From your son, Jordan." Silence. I didn't need to explain that Jordan had once been an addict left for dead in a dumpster. That I found him there. That his tears had soaked my shoulder that night, and now he worked for a UN think tank on rehabilitation policy. I let the cards drop back into their boxes. Then I looked Hugo in the eye. "You want me to kneel?" I said, calm and level. "But you're not my father. You never were. You're just the man who stole my family and called it fate." Gasps rose again. Hugo's face tightened, lips twitching as he forced another smile. Now, let's not create a scene. This is about reconciliation." "No," I said. "This is about illusion. And I'm not here to perform anymore." Laura stepped forward, face twisted in irritation. "So what, you think you're better than us now?" "No," I replied. "I was always enough. You just couldn't see it." Serena opened her mouth, maybe to defend Hugo, maybe to strike again, but she faltered when she looked at me. Really looked. Her words fell away. I turned to my mother. "You wanted me here for Dad's birthday. I'll stay for your sake. But after this, I'm gone." She reached for my hand, older now, trembling with something I couldn't name. "You look so much like your father did at your age," she said softly. I didn't reply. The dinner that night was a strained affair. Hugo played host, cracking jokes no one laughed at. My father sat at the head, watching me like I might explode at any moment. Serena sat beside Hugo, wearing the same detached smile her mother used to wear when she had secrets in her pocket. The food was beautiful. Cold, tasteless, artificial. I didn't touch the wine. When the cake was rolled out, everyone sang. I sang too. Not for him, but for the mother who stood beside him with quiet hope in her eyes. Later that night, I stood in the hallway outside the room I had once called mine. Serena approached, arms crossed, her voice low. "Why now? Why come back? After all these years, you act like you're above us." I looked at her. Not the confident adult, but the hurt child beneath. "I came because your grandmother asked. That's all." She shook her head. "You walked away." "No," I said. "I was pushed. And I stayed gone because I was finally free." Her voice dropped. "You missed everything. Mom's breakdown. The lawsuits. The bankruptcy. Uncle Hugo saved us." I met her eyes. "Saved you, or kept you hostage?" She looked away. "The life you think he gave you," I said, "he built on my ashes. I never hated you, Serena. I hated what they turned you into." She said nothing, her silence louder than words. That night, I took the old armchair on the porch. The stars were clear. The air smelled of frost and old memories. I lit a fire in a small metal basin and fed it page after page from a box I had brought. Old letters. Divorce notices. Court filings. Copies of things that no longer mattered. Hugo came out, hands in his pockets, voice casual. "So, what's next for you?" I stared at the flames. "New year. New start." "You sure you don't want to come back to the firm?" he asked, voice like oil. "You'd be a junior, of course, but I could make space." I smiled slowly. "Hugo, you spent a decade trying to erase me. Why would I ever work under you?" He chuckled. "Because power fades. Fame fades. Blood is forever." "No," I said. Blood is just biology. Family is choice. And I made mine. He left then, the smile slipping. The next morning, my real kids arrived. Jordan pulled up first, stepping out in jeans and a hoodie, eyes scanning the house like a soldier entering enemy territory. Melody followed, bright scarf around her neck, sunglasses perched in her hair like armor. Ellis came last, dressed neat and quiet, holding a tablet in one hand and a small bag in the other. I introduced them to my mother. She cried. She hugged them, one by one, and whispered things I couldn't hear. Hugo hovered in the background, his eyes tight. Serena watched from the stairs, torn between curiosity and loyalty. We stayed 2 days. We helped set up the New Year's altar. My kids cleaned the kitchen without being asked. They listened to stories from my mother, shared their own. At night, we played cards and laughed, the kind of laugh that made old walls echo with new warmth. On the third day, Serena approached me again. Jordan, she said, staring at him. You were the one in the news, right? That documentary? Jordan raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Why? You said my dad saved you. He did, Jordan replied. I'm not supposed to be alive. He made that happen. She looked at me. You raised them better than we were raised. I shrugged. I didn't try to make them perfect. Just whole. I was 7, she whispered. When I told you you weren't my daddy. I remember. I do too, I said. And I forgave you long ago. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. On the morning we left, my mother hugged me tight. Don't stay away forever, she said. You still have a place here. I'll visit, I promised. But home is somewhere else now. She nodded, resigned and grateful. As we drove away, Ellis glanced back through the rear window. You okay, Dad? I looked at my children. My real family. I'm better than I've ever been. And as the old house faded in the mirror, I knew this much: some roots rot. Others grow strong in new soil. And the legacy I was building had nothing to do with the family I left behind. 3 weeks after the new year, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a call. A thick envelope, wax-sealed, hand-delivered by courier to the small post office box I kept near my cabin. It was from an attorney named Beatrice Lane, partner at a firm I knew only from headlines: prestigious, ruthless, expensive. The letter was brief, formal, and direct. Mr. Victor Song. We regret to inform you that your name has been listed as a primary heir in the estate of the late Maxwell Ford. Please contact our office immediately to discuss next steps and verify documentation. Regards. B. Lane, Esquire. I stared at the name. Maxwell Ford. I hadn't heard it in years. He was my godfather. My real father's best friend before all the fractures in our family began. A man of principles. A quiet philanthropist who vanished from the public eye 2 decades ago. I hadn't known he passed away. I called the number. Ms. Lane picked up herself. Mr. Song, she said. Thank you for calling. Mr. Ford left behind a substantial estate, and according to his final will, you are the primary inheritor. Why me? I asked. There was a pause. Mr. Ford wrote in his will that while the world abandoned you, he never did. And that a man who rebuilds from ashes deserves a foundation strong enough to never burn again. I was silent. My throat clenched. He also left behind instructions to deliver the estate publicly, she continued. He believed truth should never be hidden. A public reading of the will is scheduled next week. We will fly you out. I hesitated. Your children are welcome to attend, she added. So I said yes. And that decision changed everything. The will reading was held in San Francisco, at the Ford Estate's private offices. Reporters waited outside, blocked by security, but the buzz had already started online. I arrived with Ellis, Melody, and Jordan. All wore simple clothes, dark jackets, no labels, but the way they carried themselves said everything. I wasn't hiding anymore. And neither were they. Inside, we were greeted by Ms. Lane, a woman in her 60s with steely eyes and the kind of grace that comes from knowing no one dares interrupt you. We were led into a conference room paneled in mahogany. At the far end, a massive portrait of Maxwell Ford stared down at us. In it, he looked like I remembered: broad shoulders, kind eyes, a man with more wisdom than wrath. Other people were already seated. And to my bitter amusement, I saw familiar faces. Laura. Isaac. Hugo. And Serena. Hugo leaned back in his chair with a smirk. Well, little brother. I guess we have something in common after all. Ms. Lane ignored him. She took her place at the front and opened the folder. The estate of Maxwell Ford is valued at approximately $140 million, she said. It includes properties in 3 countries, equity in 4 companies, 1 private tech firm, and a majority stake in Lionheart Media. Gasps rippled through the room. Lionheart Media. The very company that had partnered with Stanford on Ellis' recent breakthrough. I understood now. That delivery at New Year's. The gifts. The names on the boxes. It wasn't random. It was a signal. Ms. Lane continued. Mr. Ford's final will and testament names Victor Song as sole inheritor of his primary estate and all voting shares in Lionheart Media. Hugo stood up. That's a mistake. No, Ms. Lane replied, calm. It's not. I knew Maxwell too, Hugo insisted. He mentored me. He did, she confirmed. And then he quietly removed you from his board after you leaked data to a competitor. Hugo turned red. That was never proven. It didn't have to be. He documented everything. And he left it all here. She opened another folder and slid it across the table. Inside were documents. Emails. Voice recordings. One of them had Hugo's voice, clear as day, selling confidential strategy slides to a rival network in exchange for a beach house in Tulum. Serena's face turned to stone. Isaac stared at the table. Laura crossed her arms, lips pressed into a thin line. Ms. Lane spoke again. The Ford estate also includes a letter from Mr. Song. She handed me a sealed envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. Victor. I watched them break you. I watched them throw stones at the man building a house with nothing but his hands. But you never gave in. You never dirtied your soul to feed your pride. This empire is yours now. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove you were always right. Raise it higher. Your friend. Maxwell. I folded the letter carefully. Pressed it into my pocket. I intend to honor Mr. Ford's will exactly as he wrote it, Ms. Lane concluded. Effective immediately, Mr. Victor Song holds controlling interest in Lionheart Media, all real estate assets, and beneficiary rights to the Ford Foundation. The room exploded. Hugo cursed. Isaac stormed out. Laura muttered something about calling her lawyer. Only Serena sat still. Her eyes locked with mine, unreadable. Then she whispered, "You're going to bury him." Back home, everything changed. Calls came in from investors, from former partners, from media outlets wanting the story. But I stayed quiet. I didn't want a spectacle. I wanted to build. Ellis took point on restructuring Lionheart's R&D wing. Melody started developing a documentary series with full access to the Ford archives. Jordan began interviewing former Ford Foundation staff to continue their outreach programs. We moved fast. Hugo tried to sue. The case was laughed out of court. Too much evidence. Too many witnesses who had stayed silent out of fear, now ready to speak. Serena visited once. She stood in my doorway, not proud, not ashamed. Just tired. I don't know who I am without him, she said. You're not his. You never were. She looked down. I kept the letters, she admitted. The ones you sent. Mom burned them, but I hid some. I used to read them when I couldn't sleep. A pause. You wrote like someone who still believed I loved him. I stepped aside. Come in. She walked past me, slow. We talked that night. Not as enemies. Not even as family. Just two people recovering from the same storm, trying to make sense of the wreckage. Before she left, she hugged me. No words. Just a hug. And that was enough. By summer, Lionheart Media had doubled its valuation. We launched new programs, invested in underfunded schools, partnered with labs rebuilding prosthetic tech at a fraction of the cost. My name started showing up in places it never had before, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Stanford's Quarterly Journal. But it wasn't about fame. It was about meaning. I got a letter from my mother in early June. Victor. Your father's sick. The doctors aren't optimistic. He won't ask for you, but he talks about you in his sleep. I don't expect you to forgive him. I just want you to know. I sat with that letter for 3 days. Then I packed a bag and went home. He was in a hospital bed, pale and smaller than I remembered. His breathing came in slow rattles. He looked up when I entered. Didn't speak. Didn't have to. I sat beside him for an hour. When he finally whispered, it was faint. You turned out better than I deserved. I nodded. And that was all. He passed the next morning. I stayed for the funeral. Quietly. In the back. Laura didn't look at me. Isaac avoided me. But Serena stood by my side. Later that night, I stood again on that same porch, looking up at the same stars. But now, they didn't feel so far away. They felt like direction. And I had never been more certain of the road ahead. The morning the news broke, I was standing in the new Lionheart Media headquarters, watching construction crews raise the company's new sign. Just beneath it, in smaller letters, it read, "Founded in Legacy. Built on Truth." My phone buzzed. I expected a routine update from Ellis, maybe an early draft from Melody's latest production team. But what I saw stopped me cold. Headline, New Evidence Suggests Maxwell Ford's Will Was Forged, Internal Whistleblower Claims Tampering. Below it, a grainy image of a document. And next to it, the name of the whistleblower. Laura Song. I didn't call her. I didn't call anyone. I just stared at the screen, the chill of betrayal wrapping around my spine like old ghosts. 5 minutes later, Ellis burst into my office, holding his own phone. You've seen it? I nodded. She submitted a claim to the federal registrar this morning, he said, dropping into the chair across from me. They'll have to investigate. Even if it's false, it'll freeze your control over the estate. Over Lionheart. My voice came out low. What's her angle? Ellis didn't blink. She's betting on time. On headlines. On doubt. Jordan and Melody arrived 20 minutes later. Jordan paced, teeth clenched, fury in his eyes. Melody didn't speak at first. She sat beside me, placed her hand on mine. We can handle this, she finally said. You've built more than an empire, Dad. You built us. Still, I didn't move. Because deep down, I had always known someone in the old house would try again. I just never thought it would be Laura. Or maybe I had. The official inquiry launched 2 days later. Federal agents contacted Ms. Lane and froze all estate transfers. Lionheart Media shares were locked for review. Public opinion, which had once been turning in our favor, began to split. Hugo re-emerged like a snake shedding old skin. He made press appearances. Polished his image. Claimed he'd always had concerns about Maxwell's final days. Talked about confusion, unexplained meetings, convenient disappearances of family assets. He was smart. He didn't attack me directly. He just asked questions. Loudly. Repeatedly. Serena showed up at my door the day after his first televised interview. You knew they'd come for you eventually, she said, arms crossed. I did, I admitted. But I thought it would be Hugo. Not Laura. She shook her head. Laura never forgot being second. When Mom was dying, she begged for your return. But Laura told her you were too busy. Too important. I swallowed hard. She's not after money, Serena added. She's after relevance. I looked at her. Are you here to warn me? I'm here to help. You sure you're not still loyal to him? She met my eyes. I was never loyal to Hugo. I was scared of him. And in that moment, I believed her. Our legal team moved fast. Ellis handed over full chain of custody records from the will. Melody released behind-the-scenes footage from her documentary that showed Maxwell, dated and time-stamped, signing the final version of his estate. Ms. Lane submitted 2 decades of correspondence between her firm and Maxwell Ford, establishing beyond doubt that the will was authentic and intentionally created. But facts don't win wars. Not in the media. Not in families. Jordan came to me one night, eyes heavy with frustration. I can't keep playing defense, Dad. Every time we prove something, they twist it. What do we do? I stared at him, quiet. Then I told him the truth. We go deeper. Maxwell Ford had always been a mystery man. Public philanthropist. Private genius. But no one ever knew where the original seed money came from for Lionheart's launch. Not even me. Until Ellis, late one night, called me into his lab. I found something, he said, pointing to a decrypted file from an old drive Maxwell had used. Inside were scanned pages of journal entries. Most were mundane. But one entry, dated 34 years ago, changed everything. July 11th. They stole Victor's patents. The AI core he designed at 23 was the most promising I've seen in a decade. Hugo claimed it as his. Laura vouched for him. They buried Victor's name. I'm buying the rights back anonymously. I've already funneled the funds through a shell firm. It's not legal. But it's right. If he ever finds out, I'll tell him the truth. I felt the air leave my lungs. The AI project. The one I worked on in college. The one I had submitted under the family's name because they said we rise as a unit. I had never known what happened to it. I'd assumed it was scrapped, lost, ignored. But Maxwell bought it. Funded Lionheart with it. Built the empire on the very bones they stole from me. Dad, Ellis said quietly. You didn't just inherit Lionheart. You created it. The next morning, I held a press conference. I didn't attack Hugo. I didn't defend myself. I told the story. I shared the patent files. I read the journal aloud, word for word. And I ended with this. I was always told I wasn't enough. That I was weak. Soft. That I should be grateful for scraps. But every stone they threw became the walls I built around the people I chose to love. I don't want revenge. I want the truth. And the truth is, this was mine all along. That broadcast went viral. For once, the comments were filled with belief, not doubt. Hashtag Justice for Victor started trending. Hugo issued a statement the next day, calling me emotional and self-victimizing. But Laura stayed silent. Because she knew. And 2 days later, she withdrew her claim. No apology. No confrontation. Just a letter sent to the same post office box. You deserved it. You always did. I just hated that I saw myself in you. By fall, the estate was fully unfrozen. Lionheart soared. But I stayed grounded. I refused to move into the tower apartment Maxwell left me. I kept my cabin in the woods. I still drank tea on the porch every morning. Still chopped my own firewood when winter came. One night, Melody sat beside me, barefoot, glass of wine in hand. You think this is the peak? She asked. I shook my head. No. This is just level ground. The climb is still ahead. And I meant it. Because while Hugo and Laura had spent years building empires of illusion, I was just getting started building something real. One evening, I received a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It was old, faded, taken on the day of my college graduation. In it, I stood with Maxwell. He had his arm around me. And scribbled on the back, in his sharp handwriting, was one line. Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's who you leave it with. Autumn painted the city in fire. Gold leaves scattered across sidewalks, a crisp wind threading through the streets like whispered warnings. I stood in the glass-walled top floor of Lionheart's headquarters, watching the skyline shimmer as dusk fell. Below me, a world I had rebuilt from the ground up breathed with quiet resilience. Then Melody walked in, her face pale, her phone still in her hand. "We have a problem," she said, voice low. I turned. "Not just rumors, Dad," she continued. "This is coordinated. Hugo's old allies, they're making a move." "How?" She swallowed. "They're launching a vote of no confidence. They think they can oust you. They've been gathering proxy votes quietly. The meeting is scheduled for this Friday. 5 board members are already leaning their way." I exhaled slowly. Friday. That gave us 4 days. Jordan entered moments later, expression taut. "We've confirmed their plan. They're calling it a stability reset, trying to frame it like your leadership is too personal, too tied to emotion." "They're not wrong," I said. Melody blinked. "What?" "They're not wrong that I lead with emotion," I said. "But they are wrong to believe that makes me weak." Ellis arrived soon after, and the 3 of them stood before me, the children the world threw away, now the spine of an empire. "They'll play dirty," Ellis said. "We can't just show up with facts. We need a story stronger than theirs. Something undeniable." I nodded. "Then we give them one." Over the next 4 days, we worked around the clock. Melody compiled archival footage, every innovation, every milestone Lionheart reached under our leadership. She contrasted it with the stagnation and loss under Hugo's brief influence before the will was read. Ellis pulled hard data, investment returns, project impact assessments, internal culture scores, and external press sentiment since I took over. Jordan, quietly and without fuss, visited every undecided board member. One by one. Not to threaten. Not to beg. But to talk. He told them the truth. About who he had been before Lionheart. About what this company meant to people like him, people who never got second chances. He reminded them why this place had once meant something real. Thursday night, hours before the meeting, I received a visitor. Serena. She wore no makeup. No designer bag. Just jeans, boots, and a hoodie from a charity she supported quietly. "I'm voting," she said, standing in my doorway. I raised an eyebrow. "You're not on the board." She held up a document. "I bought a controlling stake from a silent investor last week." "Guess who?" My heart skipped. She smirked. "Maxwell left one final surprise. A portion of shares hidden in an environmental foundation's trust. When the board moves started leaking, I traced them back. And I bought them. Fair and square." "You didn't have to." "I know," she said. "But I wanted to. This place. It saved you. And I think it might save me too." I nodded, emotion thick in my chest. "Thank you," I said softly. But she shook her head. "Don't thank me yet. You still have to survive tomorrow." Friday. The boardroom was silent as the meeting began. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the rising sun, casting sharp gold light over the polished table. Hugo arrived, confident. Slick suit. Faux humility. He greeted every board member like an old friend, even those who barely remembered his name. I sat at the head of the table. No one else spoke. Then Ms. Lane entered. Not as legal counsel, but as interim chair, a position Maxwell had quietly assigned to her in case of internal instability. She opened the session with a calm, clear voice. "We've received a motion from several members requesting a vote of no confidence in Mr. Victor Song's leadership," she said. "Today's meeting will determine whether that motion passes." She nodded to Hugo. "You may speak." Hugo stood. "My friends," he began, spreading his arms like a preacher. "Let me start by acknowledging Victor's efforts. He's brought energy and emotion back to Lionheart. But we are not a charity. We are a media and research empire. And what we need now is vision, not sentiment. Focus, not nostalgia. Strategy, not sympathy." He walked slowly behind chairs, making eye contact with each person. "This company cannot be built on personal redemption stories. It must be built on proven leadership. I propose a return to structure. To a board-led committee with experience." He stopped. Looked directly at me. "Mr. Song may remain as a legacy figurehead. But the reins must pass." Then he sat. Ms. Lane turned to me. "Mr. Song. Your response?" I stood slowly. No theatrics. Just calm. Lionheart was never about spectacle. Maxwell built it to give voice to the silenced. Hope to the broken. Innovation to the forgotten. And yes, I lead with emotion. Because emotion drives empathy. And empathy builds trust. And trust wins loyalty. I looked at each board member, then at Hugo. I know some of you are scared. Stability matters. But ask yourself, what does stability cost, if it means silencing every truth this company was founded on? I stepped back. You've seen the numbers. You've seen the growth. But if that's not enough. I turned and gestured toward the door. Jordan entered, guiding a young woman in a wheelchair. Her name was Olivia Reyes. Age 21. Graduate of a program we launched for disabled STEM students. She held up her invention, an AI-powered device that translated eye movement into full verbal sentences for those with locked-in syndrome. This exists, she said through the device, because Victor funded me when everyone else laughed. Ellis followed next, with a hologram display of Lionheart's Rural School Initiative, solar-powered classrooms, satellite lessons, free curriculum distribution. Melody closed with a video reel, a short film showing how one company had pulled people from the margins into the center. By the end, the room was quiet. And Ms. Lane spoke. All in favor of the motion to remove Mr. Song? Only 2 hands rose. All others stayed down. 1. Serena raised her hand, not for Hugo, but to reject the motion. The final tally? 10-2. Motion denied. Victor Song remained CEO. Later, in the hallway, Hugo confronted me. You think you've won? This isn't over. I met his eyes. It was over the moment I stopped trying to prove anything to you. He glared. You're not better than me. No, I said. I'm just free. That night, I returned to the cabin. The stars were out again, cold and brilliant. Melody called, voice soft. What now, Dad? Now? I said. We build. Ellis sent me a prototype the next day. A portable power system for disaster zones. He named it Maxwell 1. Jordan finalized a prison reform bill in partnership with our legal arm. Melody was offered a director's seat on the National Arts Committee. Serena emailed a draft proposal for an ethics review board inside Lionheart, signed only with her initials. And me? I sat on my porch, tea in hand, watching a world I'd once been exiled from bend, finally, toward the truth. The winter came early that year. The first snowfall dusted the porch of my cabin like powdered sugar, coating the firewood pile and the bent wind chimes that never played the same tune twice. I was splitting logs when the call came in. My phone buzzed, flashing a number I hadn't seen in over a decade. It was Isaac. I let it ring. But something, some old echo of responsibility, made me pick up on the 5th buzz. His voice was cautious. Dad's gone. I didn't speak. He passed this morning, Isaac added. Quiet. In his sleep. I nodded to myself, not for him. Thanks for letting me know. There was a long silence. Then a breath. They're reading his will next week. Thought you should hear it from me. I almost smiled at the irony. The man who once said I was no son of his had now written me into his final pages. Or maybe he hadn't. Either way, I told Isaac I wouldn't come. But that wasn't the end. The next morning, a courier appeared with a thin envelope. No legal seal. Just my name, handwritten in a script I recognized immediately, my mother's. Inside was a letter. My Victor. He never said the words. But I know he thought them in the end. You were his pride. You were his reckoning. I've left something for you, not in the bank, not in the house, but where you were always free. The treehouse. Your mother. The treehouse. I hadn't thought about that place in years. Built with my father's rough hands, nailed together with the help of an 8-year-old boy who still believed love was earned. After the fallouts and betrayals, I had never once returned to it. But now, I did. The walk through the woods behind the family estate was shorter than I remembered. Or maybe my steps were longer now. The treehouse stood, weathered but proud. Moss along the base. The ladder rungs rusted but intact. I climbed slowly. Inside, it was empty. Except for a metal box. I opened it. Inside were photographs. Me, as a child, sitting on my father's shoulders. Me, next to my mother, clutching a wooden toy I built. Me, age 15, holding my first science fair project, the prototype that would become the AI system Maxwell later funded. There was a note beneath them. I didn't know how to love you the right way. But I watched. Every step. Forgive me, if you can. There was no signature. Just a watch. Old. Worn. My grandfather's, passed down to him. He never wore it. He'd always said it was meant for the son who made him proud. I left the treehouse that day with the box in my arms. And no anger in my heart. In the weeks that followed, I did something no one expected. I announced my retirement. Effective at year's end, I would step down as CEO of Lionheart Media. Ellis would take over operations. Melody would head the board. Jordan would lead the foundation. Serena, now 3 months into her role as ethics director, would remain at my side until the handoff was complete. Reporters called it shocking. Investors asked why. But my team understood. Because legacy is not something you clutch. It's something you pass on. On New Year's Eve, we held a farewell gala. Not black tie. Not flashy. We called it Stories of Us. Held in the community center Lionheart had helped rebuild in the city's oldest district. There were no cameras. Just people. Students. Survivors. Founders. Families. Each shared how their paths had crossed with the work we'd done. Ella spoke first. He shared how I taught him failure was a tool, not a sentence. Melody followed. She told the room that when the world tried to shrink her, I handed her the lens to make it big again. Jordan took the stage last. He told the truth. All of it. The drugs. The streets. The moment he almost didn't wake up. And how I sat beside him in that hospital bed, day after day, saying nothing except, "You're not done yet." Then they surprised me. Serena stepped up with a small velvet box. "We all pitched in," she said, smirking through tears. "Even Hugo." "Kind of." Inside was a key. Gold. Simple. "The Victor Song Innovation Center," she announced. "Breaking ground next spring. A space for ideas no one else believes in." I couldn't speak. Didn't need to. The room stood, clapping. And I understood something I never had before. My legacy was not wealth. It was not victory. It was not even forgiveness. It was that I never stopped choosing people, especially when no one else would. After midnight, I walked out onto the balcony alone. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent. I sipped my tea. Watched the stars. And as the clock ticked past the first hour of the new year, I felt no weight on my shoulders. Only light. Only peace. Somewhere, in a quiet forest, the wind played through the chimes of an old cabin porch. And a name, spoken not with bitterness, but with honor, echoed into the future. Victor Song. The man who chose love over pride. Truth over noise. And legacy over revenge.